The War in the Pacific, Japanese Expansion. Title: The War in the Pacific, Japanese Expansion. Introduction, 100 words. The war in the Pacific during World War II, specifically Japanese expansion, played a critical role in reshaping the global balance of power. Driven by a desire for natural resources and the establishment of a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, Japan embarked on an aggressive military campaign throughout East Asia and the Pacific. This article explores the key factors that led to Japan meant of a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, Japan embarked on an aggressive military campaign throughout East Asia and the Pacific. This article explores the key factors that led to Japan expansion, the major battles and events in the Pacific theater, and the implications of Japanese conquests on the overall war. Factors driving Japanese expansion, 300 words. 1. Economic and resource pressures. Japan's rapid industrialization and growing population in the early 20th century necessitated access to resources like oil, rubber, and iron ore. The lack of these resources within Japanese territories prompted them to expand their territory to secure vital supplies. 2. Desire for regional dominance. Fueled by nationalism and an imperialistic ideology, Japanese leaders aimed to establish a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. This vision involved creating a self-sufficient economic bloc under Japanese hegemony, challenging Western powers / colonial rule and spheres of influence in Asia. Japanese hegemony, challenging Western powers / colonial rule and spheres of influence in Asia. 3. European colonization. The weakening of European colonial powers during the war created an opportunity for Japan to expand and replace them as the dominant force in the region. Japan sought to exploit the power vacuum in East Asia left by the retreating European forces. 2. Major battles and events, 700 words. 1. Invasion of Manchuria, 1931. Japan's expansion began with the invasion of Manchuria, marking the first significant act of aggression. It aimed to secure the resources present in the region, leading to the establishment of the puppet state of Manchukuo. 2. Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937–1945. The invasion of China spiraled into a full-scale war, marked by brutalities such as the infamous Nanjing Massacre. Despite fierce Chinese resistance, Japan occupied large portions of China, exploiting its resources and expanding its influence. 3. Attack on Pearl Harbor, 1941. A turning point in the war, Japan's surprise attack on the U.S. naval base in Hawaii forced the United States into the conflict. This triggered America's declaration of war on Japan, transforming the conflict into a global war. 4. Battle of Midway, 1942. In a strategic engagement, the U.S. Navy successfully repelled the Japanese Imperial Fleet, decimating their aircraft carriers and aircrews. This battle weakened Japan's naval power in the Pacific. and halted its momentum. And halted its momentum. 5. Guadalcanal Campaign, 1942–1943. Considered a major turning point, this campaign saw intense fighting as US forces launched an offensive to seize the island from Japanese control. The prolonged struggle resulted in heavy casualties. End both sides but marked the beginning of the Allies' /island hopping strategy. End both sides but marked the beginning of the Allies' /island hopping strategy. 6. Battle of Leyte Gulf, 1944. This naval confrontation saw the destruction of much of Japan's remaining fleet. The decisive Allied victory allowed the U.S. to retake the Philippines and further weaken Japan's defensive capabilities. Capabilities. 3. Implications of Japanese expansion, 300 words. 1. Global War. Japanese expansion forced major powers around the world to engage in a global conflict that escalated the scale and intensity of the war. It drew the United States into the war, shifting their focus from Europe to the Pacific and leading to a joint Allied effort to defeat Japan. From Europe to the Pacific and leading to a joint Allied effort to defeat Japan. 2. Pacific Island hopping. The Allies adopted a strategy of bypassing heavily fortified Japanese-held islands and capturing strategically located ones with less resistance. This approach reduced the battle casualties while gradually closing in on Japan, preparing for an eventual mainland invasion. Closing in on Japan, preparing for an eventual mainland invasion. 3. War crimes and inhumanities. Japan's expansion was marred by numerous war crimes, including the ill treatment and murder of civilians and prisoners of war. These atrocities, along with Japan's brutal occupation Pollock fueled strong animosity and strengthened Allied resolve to bring the war to an end. Fueled strong animosity and strengthened Allied resolve to bring the war to an end. 4. Atomic bombings and Japanese surrender. As Japanese forces continued to fiercely defend their territory, the Allied powers sought a decisive and swift end to the war. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan's surrender in